Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. On this week's podcast, Becca Tobin joins us from Austin, Texas, to talk about her acting career and recent experience adding smart home tech to her residence. Tobin has starred in the hit TV show Glee, written a New York Times bestseller, and hosted the popular LadyGang podcast. When the talented multimedia star and her husband, real estate developer Zach Martin, moved from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas in late 2020, their excitement for their new city and house quickly grew into a desire to maximize their home enjoyment with a professionally integrated smart home system. Recognizing that this project would require professional experience and insight, they contacted the local experts at Macaulay Technologies to help them explore the full range of possibilities and determine what would best fit their needs and lifestyle. In this conversation, which was recorded for our upcoming cover story on Becca Tobin, we learn not only about what Becca and Zach love about their new technology in their home, but also find out some revealing insights about Becca's early acting successes, from the Broadway stage to starring in one of the most popular TV series in the past 10 years. So here's my earlier conversation with Becca Tobin. I know that playing Kitty on Glee was your first front of camera role. Is that correct?
It was, yes. Yeah.
And you were on Broadway with Rock of Ages and on tour with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And what a couple, that's like, it seems like some really massive first gigs, if you want to put it that way, like a collection of those things. Like, is it that straightforward, or was there a lot of build up to get to those points for you as an actor?
Yeah. I mean, on paper, it's like really exciting and seems like it was I got very fortunate, and it's always like the preparation meets timing thing. It's, so I was really lucky in those situations, but I moved to New York when I was 18. I went to a small conservatory up there for 2 years, and I started to audition for professional jobs in theater in my final year. I was 19, and I auditioned like every single day, 5 days a week, waking up at 8 a.m. in the freezing cold, standing outside waiting to be seen as like a non-union performer. Cause they'll see the union performers, and if they have time at the end of the day, they'll slip a few of you in. And if you blow them away, you get a call back, which it's a numbers game. And I think I just had a little bit more, I was more stubborn, and I maybe a little more resilient. So I stuck it out long enough to finally get those big moments. But before that, my first professional job was Cats in a regional theater production in Houston.
Okay. Yeah.
I did a West Side Story tour of I think it was like 10 cities for the 50th anniversary of that. But yeah, it was like all these little jobs leading up to that big moment of booking Rock of Ages, which was obviously my Broadway debut. And it's an incredible, I saw the show off Broadway, before I was ever in it. And I remember being like, this is the coolest musical theater show that ever existed. It's like 80s rock music, and it's crazy, amazing choreography. And I'm such a dork. I do love the like thoroughly modern Millies and the Music Mans of the world, but it was really cool to see this new modern take on musical theater. And then within, I think about a year, I was one of the first replacements in that show. I never planned on being on television. I never took any really on camera classes. It was all just singing, dancing, acting. But then when Ryan was looking to cast season 4 of Glee, the new characters, they really wanted actual performers from New York, just because that role that I was playing was really heavily dance. And so they put the feelers out to the New York casting directors, and I went in, and it was the sort of thing where I was like, this is so not going to happen, that I think that's also part of why I got it, because it was just so completely out of my realm of what was possible. And I also had my screen test and didn't even know who Ryan Murphy was. And, it's like those, I think it's ignorance is bliss in that situation. Now I know who everyone is, and I know everybody in the room, and it's like, you freak out and you have all the psychological stuff with it. So you sort of bring a little bit of desperation with you now, like these days of auditioning. Versus then. I wish I could have a little bit more of that.
You have a resume now that helps a bit, I would imagine.
It does, yeah.
But yeah, so I don't want to get too stuck on the stage stuff, but having a daughter that's obsessed with it and who she is, like, yeah, she loves like Oklahoma and the classics so much.
Yeah.
And I think she got to see Six recently on a school trip to New York, and I think she appreciates the pop musical type styles. But she just loves the traditional, and
That's
did see me
awesome.
saw Music Man. We were supposed to go to second night of Music Man, and then COVID hit, and I got gypped. I never got to see it. She got to see it though, and my wife has been
Well,
back
that's
as
good.
well. Yeah. But so stepping on stage, even after being on in tours in
Mhm.
different theaters and around the country, what was that like being on Broadway for the first time?
Terrifying. I mean, I wish I could say that it was all that practice had groomed me for that moment. But I think when you spend your entire, since I was 10 years old, I was like, I want to be on Broadway. I want to be on Broadway. And then you get there. It's a ton of pressure. It's like any sport, whatever it is. It's like you're there, it's a pinch me moment. It's a panic moment. It's a, also, the way that I went into that show was I was a swing. So, and I was the first replacement. So I didn't get the experience of like learning the show with everybody. Like
Oh,
we all come in on a clean slate. Everyone knew the show, had been doing it for at least 6 months. And I only had a few times of being able to like plug myself into those moments and learn choreography. And so the swing in any, and your daughters probably know this, the swing in any Broadway show is really like the most valuable person because they have to learn, several people's roles as opposed to one. And at any given moment, if someone twists their ankle, it's like your costume's on and you're on for that part. You can't. So it was like boot camp for theater. I had to go on, I'd say probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times before I was able to really relish in the moment of like, here I am. And I was able to give kind of my best performance because I am not a gutsy person. Like I definitely needed to, you know, get my feet wet and like, I'm not too bold. I wish I were, but yeah.
well, that's just amazing though, that even with that personality trait, you're able to do it. And like anything, the experience of doing it, I'm sure you get over the butterflies and all that, and into the groove. But
Yeah.
I just, it's not often I get to talk to someone that's actually been on that stage, and that's really great to know
Thanks.
about the reality of it.
Yeah.
um, and so then you move on to you get this opportunity on Glee. Did you find that it was harder or easier to join a cast of an iconic show like that in its fourth season?
It was kind of a similar feeling. It was, being the new kid of this thing, this hit, this people at the top of their field, people that have been, it was obviously a much bigger stage. It was like, the world stage and on a huge hit TV show versus Broadway. But to me, it held the same weight. I think just because that was always my focus was theater and that was like the peak for me. I think more than anything on on my first couple probably weeks of working on Glee, it was like being in school but not telling anybody because I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to just watch other people and see like, oh, they put tape on the floor and that's your mark. And that's where you have to go and you stand because they've lit the scene for you to be there. And like, these are things that everybody knows magically, but there's no way of really learning it until you're there, or if you went to a school for this specifically. So it was a very humbling experience. Everybody from the cast was wonderful and the crew was wonderful. And I think everybody, it was a warm environment to go into, but definitely intimidating to say the least.
Yeah, and it has to just be a totally different feeling of acting to a camera for the first time as well, after being having an
Yeah.
audience and having that reaction, I guess.
Yes, I knew I needed to. A friend of mine who went from theater to TV, thank God I had her in my life at the time of auditioning for the role. She was like, so with TV, you feel everything, but you show nothing. So it's like just that little adjustment. Obviously, I've learned a whole lot more since then, but taking the theater stuff into where the camera's here and it's so tight on your face, you're like, oh, I get it. It's like you are feeling it all, but you're not necessarily having to express it like you're on a stage, because it looks pretty crazy when you do make those choices on camera. I've done it.
Well, on the other hand, I've heard that learning how to use your face just changes so much when it's either film or TV situation, because you have to, certain things you just have to express in almost a subtle way with your face.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are people who are really, really amazing at, it's an art form, like knowing the way to turn your face, knowing the way to how your face looks the best. I still very much lack an awareness of like what my face is looking like on camera. So I just trust that all the other people that are there are going to tell me if it's something crazy. I toggle between wishing I could be a little bit more aware and less kind of, not that I'm any more in it than anyone. I'm just like, don't have that. I was not like working on that skill set my whole life, like some of these people. So it's a different kind of performance, but it's what I have to offer.
It's funny. My second cousin's my mom's cousin. She's a film editor to this day. She did some really big name movies, mostly like she was Pretty Woman, film editor, and many others, but she's a really attractive woman as well. And whenever we do a family picture, when we'd go out to California, she had a certain turn that she'd make on her face, because you could tell she's been looking at people on camera for so long that she knows how her face is supposed to look the best or something. So it's funny that you
so
say
interesting. I actually think female editors they're not now, they're more common, but
yeah,
it's the coolest job ever. And some of them are, I mean, it's such an amazing skill.
Yeah. It's cool having that connection to the business. Mm-hmm. So did you ever get sick of having to wear a cheerleader costume all the time on Glee?
I could not. I mean, it was comical at the end. I had several, because obviously we don't wear the same costume every time. So I had a lot of different ones. And I had like ones for when I was feeling like a little blah and a little bit like I indulged over the holidays. So there's like one skirt that's slightly bigger, and the wardrobe people were so amazing, and it was Groundhog Day every day. And the ponytail was the thing that was actually the most annoying to me. It was having that like slicked back ponytail for a woman, especially. It's kind of the equivalent of like not wearing many clothes, because we all use our hair, a lot of us, to, like accessorize our faces, maybe take some attention off of certain features we don't love. And having that like slicked back ponytail and minimal makeup because they wanted us to look young. It was like a little bit being naked in front of a camera. And I remember like watching the first couple episodes and just being like, I'll never like what I'm seeing, but I'm just going to have to like soldier on. It's terrible to say that, but it's like, we're all human and we all have these. I think it's pretty normal, but it was tough.
Yeah, the hair pulled back thing. That's funny you say that, because my younger daughter, both daughters, as they went through middle school, their director would never allow hair to be pulled back because they look bald in her mind from the audience. So that's clear that that's a thing, that you just don't want to look like that.
Do you want superior smart home automation at a great value? Shelly Wi-Fi relays by Alterco Robotics cover DC to line voltage, allowing you to control lights, outlets, appliances, garage doors, pumps, and much more. There are Shelly sensors and power measurement devices to help you measure temperature, humidity, lux, or motion, and electrical consumption from single wire to 3-phase with neutral. You can use Shelly with a licensed driver for Control 4, Elon, or other premium systems, as well as your customer's existing hub, voice assistant, or any platform that accepts REST, MQTT, or CoAP. Shelly can make IoT very easy. Available now at Blackwire, City Electric Supply, and Worthington, or at shellyusa.com.
Was there a transformation from being on Glee and suddenly being known by people? Social media is horrible in that regard, but are you suddenly a celebrity, or do you feel that immediately after Glee comes out?
It was definitely there was something there was obviously a shift, when we went on the show, there was a ton of attention about like Glee was still a hit show. And there was a lot of press surrounding bringing on new characters because they had fallen in love with, the world had fallen in love with these 6-ish characters. And some people are like up in arms and they don't want new people. It's like every show that brings on a new cast. It's like, you are so doomed if you are part of any new cast, because it is like, you're compared all the time to the originals. And so we were under a microscope pretty harshly in the beginning. And so knowing that there was stuff out there and people talking about us and not being this random, obscure, like dancer on Broadway anymore was an adjustment. But I also think that I still don't consider, and this, a lot of people say this, but I really haven't had like an overwhelming amount of moments where I'm like, wow, I'm famous. Like it's all kind of happened in increments. And also now there are so many people considered to be like celebrities because of social media that it's kind of nice. It spreads out the attention so you can sort of disappear a little bit more. The party's bigger,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's different niches or, specific areas of people's interest too. So
yeah,
not everyone knows everybody. And you obviously, someone like my daughter absolutely knows you. She's like, you're kidding, you're interviewing, or because I don't typically interview actors, but folks that have been in the different spots for like you have been are like a sweet spot for someone like my daughter, even if she's a little younger than that when the show was originally on. She's caught up with it clearly. So moving ahead, you talk triple threat on stage, singer, dancer, actor. You're also a triple threat with the podcast, the talk show, the writing, New York Times bestseller with your friends, the LadyGang partners. Like, could you just give me a little bit of background of how the three of you came together and got your podcast started?
Yeah. So Kelty, one of the other co-hosts, was actually a Radio City Rockette for many years.
Oh,
and
cool.
So we knew each other from that New York scene, and we would always be auditioning with each other. And we didn't know each other too well. We had friends in common, but then when I was doing Glee, she had made her transition to LA to do entertainment journalism. So she was working for Entertainment Tonight and The Insider. And I think having that background of the New York and the theater person, like we were cut from the same cloth. So we would see each other at these events, and we would be on red carpets and we'd be like, this is so weird. Why does anybody care? This is such a bizarre world compared to New York. And we would have lunches, and she's a force. And I didn't even know at the time how incredibly powerful she is, but she is a pioneer kind of in media in general. And she's always able to see what's coming down the pipeline. So when we were sitting there complaining about how in acting, you're like waiting for the phone to ring, and how with her job, it's very, it's fickle. So she said, let's join together. Let's create something that's all ours. And I think this podcast thing is going to be really big. And I had never even heard of a podcast. I was like, do you mean like Adam Carolla? I think he was the only person at the time doing a podcast. And we knew we needed a third girl. We brought on a really badass female entrepreneur, like in fashion. And it was like the accident that became the biggest gift of my career. So, and I owe it all to really her for knowing podcasting was even going to be cool.
And did you basically turn the podcast, the best of your anecdotes and stories into the book then, or how'd that happen?
Yeah. So over the years, we just, through these conversations of the way we do life in general, and the way that women that we talk to go through life, and the advice, the little snippets here and there that we picked up, we just felt like we had a lot of material for kind of a manifesto. And we were rewriting the script on what it means to be a lady, and very tongue in cheek, obviously, with the meaning, because our version is a little bit more crass and a little bit more unfiltered. Right. So we were just sort of sick of like being put in the box. And it's funny because now we've seen this whole thing explode with women in media, where everybody's sharing and everybody's open. And when this was going on, it was 2015, and it was like not happening. And so it was a very shocking conversation to drop into. So we do like to take a little bit of credit for ripping off the curtain, ripping back the curtain a little bit with women. So yeah, we just decided to write the book and write in our personal essays of things that we've sort of learned along the way and what we'd want to pass on. And some of it's great and some of it's terrible, but that's life.
It's funny. I did not realize that your colleague on Turner and Hooch actually has a book out as well. And I was of all places, I was in Dallas yesterday. It's a crazy week. At Love Field Airport, and I saw his book on the shelf there, and thought that was like, I guess everybody's doing everything now.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I think it's also like with Josh, he has such an interesting story that he's never told. And now there's an ability to share what he went through without fear of being judged as harshly or have it affect his higher ability. It's really, everybody, I think, feels like ready to shed all of their truths because we've all protected these little skeletons in our closets for so long, because for a while you really couldn't get away with letting them out and not have it affect your career.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's a good way to put it. And I mean, if someone likes what you're doing, the more media outlets that you can find something from them on, I guess is better.
Yeah.
So good on you to do that. And anybody that publishes a book, to me, it's like high respect, because it takes a little bit of focus and time to do that.
It sucked.
I bet I'm going to do it someday. I just haven't had the discipline yet to get there. But
Yeah.
so I had a weird question, then I want to ask you a few about the house, and we can wrap up because I know you've got time constraints. But what do you think you've gotten to do some iconic things or related to iconic pop culture things, like starring in Glee, one, acting in a show that's a Disney show, even though it's not technically Disney, it's on Disney Plus and all. Which is also based on a Tom Hanks classic, and everyone loves Tom Hanks.
Yes.
And then you were also in a Hallmark Christmas movie, two Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, my God,
I don't know.
No.
Yes, one Hallmark Christmas, and then I just did one for GAC, like, and it was on Peacock, the NBC.
Oh, okay.
But I've done other Hallmark movies that were like a spring one. I can never really remember. They're such fast shoots, and I never watched them. So I'm like, did it happen? I don't know.
Well, as the only male in a house, even when my dog's female, I would vote that Hallmark's probably the most iconic, at least the Christmas one.
Yes.
Just, at least recent years.
Yes.
So it's funny you don't watch them. I got roped into them last Christmas season, and I have to say it was somewhat soothing to my nerves after all of the.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I couldn't watch another Marvel or violent thing, and it's like, okay, it's corny premise, but I'm in. I'll go for it.
Yeah. There's never been a better time, truthfully, than now to sit down and watch one of these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just the fact that they're churning them out, not to sound like it's just a machine, but that's an opportunity for an actor. I mean,
oh yeah.
And they shoot so beautiful. I mean, the aesthetic of them, I mean, they make you look awesome, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I didn't know what a big deal these movies were until I got the first one. And I just was kind of like, sure, I'll go to Canada for 3 weeks and shoot this movie. I've never done a like romantic comedy, whatever. And then I think that was the thing in my life that I got the most text messages and emails and like phone calls. And my mom was getting contacted, people being like, but you didn't tell us that Becca's in a Hallmark Christmas movie. I was like, is this a thing? I had no idea. And it was really like, people are committed to those movies. So it was cool.
Yeah, we have the app, so there you go.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't get watched as often as Disney Plus during the non-holiday season, but it's still there on the Apple TV.
Yeah.
So switching over to your house, I know a little bit of backstory of how you ended up in Austin, and it sounds very logical. Like, we can do it remotely. Let's do it and get out of the LA market and get a little more breathing room and all that. How do you come across your custom installation company to start doing the tech part of your house?
So I can't take any credit because if it were up to me, I would still be playing music like off of my phone, like everywhere I go. I'm like I'm such an old person, but my husband is very into tech, and ever since we've lived together, it's like he was the first person to get a Sonos speaker. He was the first person to, the whole thing. So when we found this house, it's just, there's a lot of beautiful outdoor space and opportunities to entertain. And he just said, you can't live in a house and like this and not have this type of technology. So for a while I was like, is it necessary? I don't know. I feel like it's, music is music. And then of course, now I'm eating my words because, I'll be sitting on the couch and the baby will be fussy and I'm feeding him a bottle. And I'm like, he loves music and we love having music on. And I'm like, I instead of getting up and making sure that something's plugged in and blah, 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 blah. And I just get on my phone on the app and I'm like, play the music in the living room and dim the lights from my phone. And every time I do it, it's, I hate that he's right, but it's a game changer.
Yeah. So did he know pretty much what he wanted, or did you get kind of walk through it? And did you get to be a part of that conversation in those early stages of this? Here's some options, how far we can take it or not take it?
Yeah. So the people who lived in the house before had certain things already set up. Like there were speakers in the ceiling that were already installed. There was already the media closet ready for all the equipment. So it made it pretty easy and like relatively simple to find out kind of what we wanted in this house. And I'm like, so like I said, I am not a tech person, but my husband asked questions like, what lights do you think we need on dimmers? And, which ones will we use the most? And, he took me out into the backyard and was like, listen to these speakers. Should we move them? And the people that came in and actually installed everything, it was so collaborative because he's very opinionated on how he wants everything to work. So I took a little part in it, but he really did work with Control 4 and the installation on like tweaking it and making it kind of perfect for our lifestyle.
And besides the music, what else do you like about it? For personally, I'm finally getting motorized window shades, and that's just like a game changer for me.
Yeah.
Do you like parts of the smart home aspect besides, in addition to having the music in your ceiling, basically?
Yeah. So, the music. And like I said, the lights on the ability to do it on the app, and also just the dimmers in general. I should have known this as an actor, how much like lighting affects the environment. And, we would entertain in our house in LA we didn't have any of this fancy stuff. And, you couldn't really set the mood perfectly, and you couldn't make it feel like a really cozy, like sexy restaurant. And now it's like, I walk around before we have people over and we like set the lights, and I'm such an aesthetic person that to me is like the most thrilling.
Yeah.
I would say like, the lighting for me and really the app, like, because I was so annoyed in the old house of having to go to all these different apps to control everything in the house. Now it's like thermostat, lights, TV, like the remote control. You're not like, I'm again holding the baby all the time. And I'm like, I really wish I could just put something on the TV, but the remote's across the room. And it's like, oh, wait, it's on my phone. And so I pull up my phone and I operate the TV without the remote from my phone. And it's so simple, and at times I feel like we're all turning into Wall-E, but I'm loving every moment of it.
Yeah. And you've got a nice network there too. And that's, I'm sure, important as you do stuff like this with the,
yes,
Zoom, and also recording the podcast. I would imagine just having a reliable network is important.
Very, very much so. That was like top of our list, really, because we both are working from home, and we probably will be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that remote, that's the whole point of getting to Austin, isn't it? To have that remote thing. Well, I do appreciate your time, and it's great meeting you and hearing some of your stories and learning a little bit more about your house. And thank you so much.
Thanks,
great talking to you, and best of luck on everything, Becca.
Thanks, you too.
And that wraps up today's show. You can learn more about Becca Tobin's Austin, Texas integrated home in the next issue of Residential Tech Today. You can check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to our print or digital magazine and to our Tuesday and Friday email newsletters. Also, if you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform and consider rating or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist to architect, residential tech, home automation, smart device, home or smart house.